we went all over the place. Within each area that we were covering, that we were doing the search, we were doing street casting. We were talking to community leaders, we were talking to youth leaders, we were going to sports clubs, also even mad places like Facebook Marketplace, where all the nanas and the aunties go on and selling their stuff. And, it's like you kind of have to be really creative with the places that you go to.
Hello and welcome to The Process. I am Philip Barantini. I am the director of Adolescence. And today I'm pleased to be here in conversation with the amazing casting director, Shaheen Baig. Hello, Shaheen.
Hi.
Nice
Hello.
to see you.
Nice to see you. This is a joy. It's a
Isn't
treat.
it? Yeah. I never thought I would get to do this.
No.
Firstly, I just want to say that it's, we've worked together on a couple of projects now, a few projects actually. And I, coming at it from an ex-actor's point of view, I think that you are just the best. And, I will say that because I want to work with you forever. But, your process for Adolescence, it kind of blew me away in terms of the amount of work that you put in to casting these, not just the older characters, but especially the youngsters.
Can I ask you a question? Of course you can. Can you get me out of this place?
I'm afraid I'm of no use to you there.
Why couldn't they put me in a proper prison?
A better facility wasn't available.
Or putting me in a madhouse?
It's a secure training centre.
How did you come onto the project?
So I came onto the project because I'd worked with so many of you involved with the project. I mean, you and I had worked together before on Boiling Point. I've been working with Warp Films for years. I've worked with Matriarch before, and I'd worked with Plan B before. So, and also with Jack Thorne on various things. So in a way, I feel like throughout my career, I've been working with a whole number of you. So I think that's how it all kind of came together with me coming on board.
And obviously, like when we spoke to you about this and the process and what it was we were trying to achieve, what was your sort of initial reaction to that? Like,
I think the sort of format didn't scare me because I thought, okay, well, that's how you're going to make it. So that's what we have to work towards. I think a lot of our initial conversations were about age. Were about sort of, okay, the age of Jamie and how, because, the youth of that character is so crucial to this story. And so we had a huge amount of conversations right from the get-go about age and how can we do this as safely as possible, but as effectively and as powerfully as possible. And I think that was my initial sort of not concern, but thought was like, okay, how are we going to approach this role in the best way we possibly can?
I know, because you and I spoke quite early on about like that, and that was a concern for all of us. Like, reading that first episode, and I think you probably only read the first episode at that point, maybe. I think there was only the first episode written at that point. But I knew that the third episode in particular was going to be literally just Jamie and, Bryony in a room together. And so when we were sort of initially talking about casting this role, we did talk about casting 18-year-olds, right? And you went out and looked for those that age as well, right?
We started looking at sort of over 16 to play younger, and then quite quickly, I think that our conversations just kept evolving, and it was like, no, we have to cast as close to the age of the character as possible, and the script would tweak in whatever way it needed to tweak to work with those young actors, because it wasn't just Jamie. It was like, all the other characters were really key. So then I think, we generally looked from across sort of, I think it was 13 to about 15, 16. That was sort of the span.
I think
I
there was a
think
few
we
17-year-olds in there as well.
were, yeah. I think we realised quite quickly that 18 was too
Yeah,
old.
yeah, totally.
But I think we then the majority, yeah, it was between 13 and a few, yeah, 16 with a few 17s.
And even for me, like, you know, we were looking at some really great actors in there, but like, and I've said this quite a lot, and you know, I think you and I spoke about this. There's something between the age of 13 and 15. These lads, like the boys, are becoming men, and so
Yeah,
everything is changing in the not just their body, but their like their voices, the way they hold themselves. And it was really interesting to see that when, you know, you see like a 17-year-old comes in, they still look young, but
yeah.
just the way they spoke and the way they held themselves was different, right?
So fascinating. You can go into a classroom in any classroom in the country, and you can walk into a classroom of like 13, 14 year olds, and they all look completely different to each
Yeah.
other. You know, you've got people who are 6 foot, you've got, you know, it's like the levels of maturity are so varied, and girls generally feel much older than they are. That's always the rule, and that's often an issue with casting. Whereas with boys, it's sort of, it's not the opposite, but it's really varied. And so part of the kind of not the complication, but something we had to think about is this is an ensemble cast, and we have got lots of young people, and we've got to believe they're all kind of roughly the same age. They're all in the same year at school, and they feel like they might know each other. They're all sort of connected to each other. So I think that's always the trick when you're casting young people, is like, but these two boys are both 13, but one is feels 25
Yeah.
and the other could feel 12, you
Yeah.
know. So that, I think, is something we all constantly had to keep reevaluating, looking at, thinking, okay, who do we believe as
Mhm.
a group?
And you know, obviously for me, I get the tapes, but I don't see what you and your team are doing, you know,
Yeah.
day in, day out, like going out into these, you know, these schools and these drama clubs and, you know, even like shopping centers and places like that, right? You were giving flyers out, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you know, that level of commitment and dedication to this project, I think, you know, it definitely shows for me because, like I say, I get the tapes, um, and there was a lot of them.
It
You know
was
what
a
I
lot.
mean? So what is your sort of process in that when, you know, obviously we're not looking for names, so it makes your job a lot harder, or is it do you find it easier to just go out and just be like, right, the net is going to be as wide as we possibly can here?
I think, you know, doing any kind of search is difficult because just the resources, you know, just the sheer resources that you need to support that. But that's how you find new talent, and that's how that's how you discover new talent. So it's really important, I think, where possible, to do a search. And on this, you know, it wasn't even one location. It was like, okay, this family, this story's in the north of England, but it's not a specific place.
Mm,
It could be anywhere. And because I don't think we ever say where we are. So we discussed, didn't we? Okay, well, let's maybe hit these 5 cities, these 5 areas, and not even cities, just kind of areas. And let's target those places. And we sort of attacked them in a number of different ways. We use social media, which can be very powerful when you're doing open casting. So that's putting out flyers and asking people to send a little video and stuff. We sort of, you know, you go out wide. And of course, the wider you go out, the greater the volume. And I think we ended up with like 500-600 tapes, I think,
mm,
in the end, which then, you know, we all, and you and Joe, the producer, have, you know, we've got to go through them because, you know, and often, you know, whenever I do an open call in this way, you always get people going, oh, you don't watch all the tapes. It's like, well, of course we do,
mm.
because
Yeah,
that's how you discover people.
yeah. And I'm sure there's people that don't probably watch all the tapes, but I know for certain that you did and we did. Um, but like, you know, I think when in the process did you realize that Owen was a bit special?
I think that when we got to that place where, we were recalling, and then we got down to like a core group,
Yeah.
I think of about five. It was about five
Yeah.
young people for Jamie. And they all had, they're all brilliant people and all had their own strengths. And we were lucky in a way because we did have five great young actors in front of us. But, the thing that we kept talking about was repetition. It was actually finding somebody who was able to, even for an adult actor, this format can feel terrifying
Yeah.
and overwhelming, and often, you're having to work in a way that you aren't very often, and utilize skills that perhaps you wouldn't be asked to utilize on a regular shoot. And so, for the young cast, we really had to think about that. We had to think about, would they have the kind of the focus, the energy to be able to sort of keep doing it, and for each time it to feel fresh and different. It's such a different skill set to doing a shot and then having a break, and so I think that's where Owen really sort of rise to the top, because I'm sure inside probably was quite overwhelming and a bit terrifying, but he just sort of was really focused. He kept his head down, he did the work. Each time he came in, or each time he came into the room, he took on board everything you were saying to him, everything Stephen was saying to him, and he just kept on going. And that is a really unusual quality, I think, in
Yeah.
any young actor, but particularly someone who has not acted for screen before. I just think that's really that sort of fearlessness and
Yeah.
focus that he projected, whether that was true or not, because underneath he could have been masking all sorts of things,
Yeah.
was amazing. And I so admire that in him, because not many people would be able to do that at all.
No, not even like seasoned professionals. Sometimes I've talked to them and they're like, how did they like keep you going for that long? It is like doing a play, I suppose, in some respects. But even a play, you get to come off stage now and again and you have a break and you have a rest. But with that episode, he blew me away completely. But I think what also was amazing about you and the team was like, just the welfare from day one, in terms of like, we knew like what you said earlier, that we were definitely going to cast someone of that age, 13, and Owen was 14 at the time, but he looked about 12. um,
Yeah,
um
still done.
well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, although he's quite tall now.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, for me, it was a new thing, because I've not worked with that, kids. I'd worked with one kid before, like a 3-year-old before, in a TV thing, but just it blew me away, like the level of respect and the level of security, and just the what you guys had with the parents. Does that add an extra layer of, I suppose it does when you're working with someone who they need regular breaks, they need to have tutoring and all that stuff, and you've got to deal with this school and all that kind of stuff. How does that impact, the sort of the day to day as well?
Yeah, I think that if you're going to cast in this way, in an open casting way, it comes with a huge amount of responsibility, not just for the casting team, but for the production. And that's something that Joe Johnson and I spoke about from day one. And, I sort of, one of the, in talking about Adolescence, one of the things that I feel really strongly about is when I watch the show, those performances from all of the young cast, I don't think would be as great as they are if they didn't feel safe
Yeah.
and they didn't feel that they were in fact, the whole cast, but particularly the young cast, because a lot of them were very new to that process. I think they all felt really, really well looked after
Yeah.
and really safe. And I think that makes a world of difference. So from day one, there was a huge amount of care on this production, from the production and from the producers. And then throughout the casting process, we all made it as joyful as it could be when we were working around a subject that wasn't, and that was really difficult. But at no time did I don't think it ever felt heavy or tricky, because we were all having a good time and enjoying each other's company, and the kids were having a good time. And I
Mm,
think that's really important, that level of energy and care.
yeah.
And of course that has to extend to the families, who are entering a industry that they've never experienced, and an experience they've never gone through before. So that is, of course, it's another layer of work. But I've got a brilliant team. The production office, the production team were brilliant, and between us, we figure it out. And that's when I think you can see on screen when actors are happy.
Yeah.
Really believe that. And I think, I remember coming to the cast and crew, and I think that's part of the reason I was so emotional about it, was because I think that was achieved because everybody was doing their job to the very best of their ability, and they felt supported in order to do that.
You were saying that there was 5 people who were up for Jamie. We had a discussion early on when we worked with those 5 people and saying, look, if they don't get the role of Jamie, we're going to give them
Yeah,
another role in the show. And all of them did get a role in the show. And I don't know whether you can probably tell me more than this, but I've never, as an actor back in the day, I've never experienced that before. Do you know what I mean? You go to an audition, you put your heart and soul into it, and you get down to the last however many 5, and then suddenly it's like, oh, sorry, you didn't get the job. Thanks for
yeah.
coming, that kind of thing. But again, for you, like how it felt amazing for me to be able to do that.
Oh, it was really a joy because, there's only ever one person for the role. And you often, of course, all the time, casting directors think about the actors that didn't get it for other parts in other shows. But on this, to be able to give them all a part and they all have a proper presence in the show, I mean, that's a joy, because actually I feel so privileged that we met those people
Yeah,
and they were able to have that opportunity. That's one of my favourite things about it, really.
yeah. And look what they're all doing. They're all
I
now
know.
they're all now professional actors, and they're
They've
doing they're
all
doing
worked and in the industry, and it's absolutely
yeah.
nice.
And that's another amazing thing is about like being able to get them agents off the back of it, because most of them didn't have agents, or they had like
No,
local agencies or whatever.
them did, but they were sort of, because they went to maybe a drama club on a Saturday that had
Yeah,
an agency attached to it, um, and it's brilliant. It's introduced them to lots of different people and new experiences, and it's part of their journey now.
yeah. It's just, I mean, this whole thing is just it just keeps you know giving and giving this show. It's blown my mind, and I like I said before, like I would. You're the only one I want to work with going forward. I've told you that already. Anyway, and
But
we are
also,
currently working together. Go on.
those the adult cast. Can I
Yeah,
just say, again, you wouldn't, those performances from the young actors. Again, we had our brilliant, brilliant adults working around them. That really, again, that's something that's all credit to the adults, because they also helped in kind of making that young cast feel safe. And just looking yesterday at the BAFTAs, Erin and Owen presented the award, it was absolutely joyful,
yeah,
because they are now connected forever.
yeah,
And what a masterclass for him to be
yeah.
able to do that with her.
And yeah, you're right. All of the characters, we spent a lot of time casting. Even the small, they're not. There's no small roles. Of course, it's an ensemble piece, but you know, like with a show like this, it's not like you come in for one day and you do your scene and then you leave again. You have to be in all the rehearsals and all of the weeks that you're in for the shoot as well. And so, for any actor coming in, they were coming in as part of the you know the family.
It's like a company.
It
It
was like
was
a
like
company.
it
Yeah,
was like a company, and the cast and crew, everyone was part of that company. We were all
yeah.
in it together, and that's
I
a
remember
very unique.
at the read through, and it was like sat around a table just like going, oh my God, look at all of these amazing people that we brought together, you know.
Thank you.
Shaheen, it's been amazing catching up, and I can't wait to see you soon. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.